Let's talk a little bit about pre-employment services.
All right. With the implementation of the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act in 2014, all the VR agencies in the United States was mandated to spend 15% of their federal allotment to provide pre-employment transition services. And the law was very clear on who we provide it to and what those services are. So pre-employment transition services are provided to students with disabilities, and a student is defined as anyone in secondary, post-secondary, or a recognized education program who is receiving services under an IEP or is eligible for services under a 504 plan. They don't actually have to be on a 504 plan, but they have to be eligible for services under a 504 plan.
Okay, so go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yeah, and then we can also serve individuals, our students now who are potentially eligible for our program. So that's new for us, because in the past, when I was a counselor, and when Shannon was a new counselor, we could only provide services to those students who had completed an application for VR services, who had been determined eligible, and who had a plan in place. With potentially eligible, that's allowing our counselors to get into schools quicker and opening up the door to work with those students. And I didn't say the age, did I?
Yeah. Not yet.
I forgot it. So the age is 9th grade or age 16 through 21.
Okay.
So that's a very important piece. So do you want me to go back and do it since we can edit?
We're fine with this. I can always go from that. 16 to 21.
Yeah.
Now, how does someone identify an individual that could receive pre-employment services if they're not receiving current services through the education system?
Well, when we were able to, when the potentially eligible piece of the law was came about, and it opened the door up for those 9th grade or age 16 through 21 students to be served earlier, and that's a great thing, because we know that by the time you get in 11th or 12th grade, you need to start providing services earlier. And like Shannon said earlier, it's really to start exposing them to careers younger and just getting their mind flowing about what they can do once they exit. So pre-employment transition services they are given based on the need of the student. So there's 5 required activities that are listed under pre-employment transition services. A student may not need all 5. A student may not need any. It's the counselor gets with the student, talks with the teachers, talks with the parents, and they kind of identify what that student may need out of those 5 services. They may need only one. So for example, the 5 required pre-employment transition services that are mandated under the law, the first one is job exploration counseling. The second one is work-based learning opportunities. The third one is post-secondary or counseling on post-secondary transition programs. The third one is workplace readiness training, and the fifth one is, I'm sorry, the fifth one is self-advocacy. So there's 5.
Okay, self-advocacy there.
So it's job exploration counseling, work-based learning, counseling on post-secondary training, workplace readiness training, and then self-advocacy. That's the 5.
Oh, that makes sense. I mean, I remember when I was in high school, those were things that I was thinking about in 9th and 10th grade.
Right.
Did I want to go to college? What did I want to study? And then taking those tests, like, what are you going to be good at? So you should look into these careers, kind of thing. So those services traditionally weren't available to an individual with a disability until, relatively recent is what.
Well, I think they were, certainly our counselors were working with the students in the 11th and 12th grade to do a vocational evaluation and to kind of identify strengths and weaknesses and start then. And the schools, they've been doing it, but now the law was very clear that we collaborate with the schools, we coordinate with the schools, and so it's a more concerted effort at an earlier age for those students, so that they'll have an opportunity to be more successful and kind of know what to identify a career earlier and then start
getting their gears turning.
Right, instead of just identifying a career in 11th or 12th grade, they can kind of identify it in the 10th, and they can start doing those work-based learning activities where they can go do some job shadowing or things like that, so that when they do graduate and they're ready to transition, they'll have a really good idea of what they're going to be doing.
Yeah.
And sometimes they'll get in there and be like, this is not what I thought it was.
Exactly.
Really? That's a good thing to learn. Now, is there one counselor per school?
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
well,
But one counselor may have multiple schools.
Okay.
Like when I was a counselor, I had 5 schools. So we've kind of evened out the caseloads a little bit, but there is one counselor may have multiple schools.
Now, what does that look like when the counselor is working with the school? Are you setting up the program, the job exploration program for each individual, or are you coaching somebody to do that for their students in the school?
Well, we work with our community rehab programs to provide those pre-ET services. So Shannon would work, she would identify what services are needed in her schools, and then she would identify a CRP to provide that service. Our counselors can provide some services. We have our business relation consultants who can come in and provide services. We have cooperative agreements with several schools to jointly fund some positions. They're jointly funded pre-employment transition specialist positions, and those specialists are in the schools working with the counselor to provide those services. So there's many different ways that the services can be
and
provided.
getting with teachers and case managers also, because they're with the students all day.
Yeah.
So just saying, well, what are you noticing that this student can benefit from, and how can we help you to overcome?
Well, and one important thing, that's a good thing to bring up, is that the law was very clear that we are not to go in and take over what the school is doing.
Okay.
So we don't want to do that because they're doing a lot of good things and have been doing a lot of good things. We're there to fill in the blanks or to fill in the holes or the gaps or whatever you want to call it. And that's what we have an initiative called Transition Unlimited, where our counselors get together with they form a team from their schools, teachers and counselors from their schools, and they come together and they kind of talk about all the students in 9th through 12th grade, what kind of services they need, and then they map out a plan for the year, and they have a plan for each of the 5 categories, and they have the services that they're going to provide under each of those categories. So every school, every public high school in the state has a Transition Unlimited plan.
Okay.
For the pre-ETS services that they're going to provide for that year.
And then they'll come to you as a counselor and say, hey, what do you think about this plan? Give us some feedback, help us implement.
And we just figure out what's best for the school, what's best for the students, because like she said earlier, some students may not need all 5, or some may just need a couple here or there, and it's just making sure we're hitting each target area that the student needs.
Yeah.
And also making sure that they're exposed to everything, and the teachers are aware of what we're doing versus what they're doing, because they have their own transition goals that they have to hit. And so we're not trying to necessarily do those, we're just trying to, like she said, fill in the gap and make sure that the student's getting everything that they possibly can need.
Now, how many individuals are served yearly in the state of Alabama?
Well, right now we have about 6,000 students who are being served in that potentially eligible slot that I talked about. We call that pre-app. That's just the term that we have, but those are those potentially eligible students. And then we have about a little over 16,000 who we have taken applications on this year who were transition age. And transition age, while pre-ETS is 9th grade through 16, transition age for us, according to RSA, the Rehab Services Administration, is 24 years and younger.
Okay.
So we have taken a little over 16,000 applications this year for fiscal year 19 on those individuals who meet that transition age.
Now, will you serve all 16,000 if they're eligible, or do you have that capacity, or is there? That is quite a bit. Yeah, that is really, really awesome.
And a lot of those 6,000 who are in pre-app, they'll be transitioned over to be our caseloads, because pre-employment transition services is really, we do a lot of group services, and then when those students need more individualized services, for example, a vocational evaluation, or they get ready to go into employment, they'll transition, the VR counselor will transition them from a potentially eligible status. They'll take an application on them, and the transition services that we've really always been providing, we'll start providing those on an individualized basis.
Okay, so you'll kind of break that down even further once they get further along in that
Pre-ETS,
process.
like I said, is really a lot of group, and we can talk to you about some of the activities that we've provided, but they're really a lot of group activities.
What kind of activities?
Yeah, so for example, under job exploration counseling, we do career interest inventories.
Yes, I do a lot of career tours.
Okay.
So we may go visit like the BJCC downtown and explore what jobs they have to offer there for when you graduate high school, when you know, if you go to college route, you know, just exposing them to that. And then we've also done the Mercedes plant for those that want to go into production type work. We do Vulcan Industries, which is kind of like construction, welding, the blue collar jobs that a lot of people, it's in high demand right now. I
Yeah.
will say that a lot of people are retiring. There's nobody to fill it. We have a big career expo in Shelby County every year where the students 9th through 12th grade come out. We have about 30 professionals there, and they're able to go talk to them about what they like about their job, just learn more about it versus reading something on a paper. They're actually talking to an individual that's actually doing that.
Yeah. Now, do you go to the BJCC with each high school, or do you kind of?
It depends on if that's an interest area for my students. So one high school that may be an area of interest, but then I may have others that are like, that's not something I'm interested in. So I tailor it to the students' needs at each individual school.
Yeah, that's a lot of planning.
Yeah.
Very individualized for the school and the students there.
Yeah, and we have a job exploration training program during the summer that we do. It's a 2-week program where they do some in-class activities, and then they go out and do those hands-on learning at different places of employment.
How did you find the employers to do that?
Well, our CRPs, we leave it up to our community rehab programs, and they go out and they kind of tailor the program based on the students' needs and what their interests are.
Sounds like there's 5 different entities involved there. You know, you have the individuals and the schools and the counselors in the schools, and then you have the you know, you guys, and then looking for the employers there. So there's a lot of people involved in that process. Does the communication get cumbersome a little bit?
Not really, because when we use like a community rehab program, we're kind of like the point contact between them and the school and the consumer, and they do monthly reports, or they do a report on any time that they interact with the student. And so it's just making sure that all of the entities, when we're getting that communication, making sure we enter it into our system. And we are able to share information with the schools as well. So in my line, open communication is everything.
Yeah.
And so as long as we're all on the same page, which we do a lot of planning, like you stated, just to get there, and so we know what to expect and when to expect it.
Now, are there other options for schools to use in their transition plan, or are you guys the go-to only one in the state of Alabama?
So are you talking about the pre-employment transition plan? So the counselor, she develops, the counselor develops the team, and the counselor is the lead team member. So it's really, while there's a group of people who come together to develop the plan, the counselor is the primary go-to person. And we do progress monitoring to make sure those services are getting delivered. The counselor can go in and add services if she needs to add services. So the VR counselor is, on our side for pre-employment transition services, is the main point of contact to get the services in place and get the students referred to the program.
So you guys have a really good relationship with the schools at that point.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
I think it's probably improved
Yeah.
since I think everybody was kind of overwhelmed in the beginning with WIO and pre-employment transition services because it was a lot.
yeah.
But I think there's several good things. I mean, the collaboration with the schools has increased a lot. And then we've heard so many great stories of people who have gone on college tours and didn't think post-secondary was an option for them, or, you know, they've gone to these places of employment and thought, I can never work there, and they can. So we've really had to change the way we were moving and how we were doing things, but I think it's been beneficial.
Now, you said you think it's gotten better. What were some of the challenges working with schools? Or some of the challenges that you saw schools have with the WIOA?
Well, I think I'll let Shannon,
I say it's really, before, I don't think it was fully understood.
what we could do
and what we
That's
couldn't
right.
do.
Right.
I think that was the main thing, is you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
And so now that we have like Transition Unlimited, and the teachers are coming and listening to, this is what WIOA says that we can do, and it's actually broken down, and that communication is now wide open because they are able to come to our side of the world and kind of understand a little bit more. That definitely helps. And then two, we're in the school and starting earlier. So we're not waiting to junior and senior year where teachers could be frustrated and like, well, we needed this 9th and 10th grade. Now we are starting earlier and hitting that. So by the time we get to junior and senior year, we already have a plan in action as far as what the student can do or what their plans are when they graduate and exit high school.
Yeah.
And I think that involving the schools has been tremendous in helping that versus we just coming in and saying this is what.
Okay.
I think some of the challenges you're having, at least what I'm hearing from counselors, is just being able to access the students because they have a pretty full schedule now, and not every school has a transition period, and so it's. I think the challenge now, like I said, is just accessing the students for the amount of time that they need them.
They have a
for.
busy day. It's tough to,
Right.
you know, like you said, the academics. Then you want to get them out into the workforce, and
Because now they have required electives as well that they have to meet, and so.
there's so many that, like, you have to use this, you have to, guidelines and rules, and it's like.
And then here's the VR one.
Right.
Right. Service, so, yeah.
So I could kind of understand how there might be a little edge there between the schools and VR, where it's like we don't want something else coming in, you know. But
Well, I don't know. I wouldn't say that they don't want us
Right,
coming
yeah.
in. They're definitely working with us to help us out. It's just, you know, they've got, you know, like Shannon said, they've got to do what they've got to do on the academic side, and they want the students to have access to it. They're working really hard to help them have access and provide the access. It's just difficult during the day to get in the academic piece and then get in this.
And everybody's not as fortunate to have, like me, my school system's amazing. So they've actually implemented in the IEPs to state if they are out on a VR or vocational rehab trip or activity, that they're not responsible for like the worksheets that they do in school. They're just responsible for tests.
yeah, that makes sense. So
Because-
is this part of every IEP or just some
No,
schools?
it's just something that my district has started.
Yeah.
But it has helped tremendously because they are able to do more. But like she said, it's not like that.
Well, now, transition services would be listed as a part of their
Yeah.
IEP. And some of these services may be
goal.
listed as a goal, but the extra that you were talking about, that's
Yeah,
just
that's
specific
just
to your
for-
school,
yeah.
yeah.
Now, we've mentioned a few different programs there, and I'd like to go through each one with some examples,
Okay?
and then maybe a success story if one pops to mind. For job exploration, take us through exactly what that is from start to finish.
Typically, with a freshman or a 9th grader, we would just come in and do just a couple interest inventories, personality tests, just to kind of get their gears turning. Because if you ask them, they're like, "I'm not sure what I want to do."
That's right.
I didn't at that age. Like, you know.
So just to getting them to start
still don't
thinking
wanna-
about it.
And you could also have businesses come in and
Yep.
talk about in-demand jobs in their areas, just like she said, just getting the thoughts rolling and what's out there in their community.
Now, the personality test, is that like a written test, or do you do that?
Yeah, it's the Myers-Briggs is one that we typically do, and it just lists like out of these 3 options, which one relates most to you. So it's kind of like that, and then we just break it down into job clusters is what we call them.
Okay.
And then under each job cluster, it could be a list of different jobs.
Gotcha.
And get them to thinking about, oh, well, I never thought about that. This may be something that I can do.
So for the job exploration, really opening their eyes and then giving them a few basic options. I don't want to say basic options, but you could go into this field. These are the types of work that you could do there. This is what the position will be called.
Right, and you know, if they identify something in their interest inventory that they're interested in, then that could roll into that second category, which was work-based learning.
Talk about that. Yep.
And that way they could do some, maybe during job exploration training, or either working through a CRP, maybe they could spend some time at that employer doing job shadowing or getting some hands-on activities to really decide if that's the kind of job
for
they want to do.
instance, this summer we had a couple at Black Watch Sports Performance, which is in Chelsea. We had a student who wants to be an athletic trainer, so that was perfect for him to be able to go and experience that, to work on training athletes. There were several professional athletes that actually came through, and
Really?
the student was able to take pictures with.
wow.
So, you know, just getting him into that atmosphere to say, okay, this is what I really want to do, and getting that experience to put on a resume for when the time comes to actually apply for a job.
Yeah. Now, how many times can you repeat that? Let's say I go somewhere, a work-based learning experience, and I'm like, nope, this isn't for me. Do next week I go to a different area, or is it typically every month? Or
Well, that's just in the summer, because during the school year they don't have as much time. But we can set up job shadowings, which I have done that before, just to explore different things. So it's not limited to just one. So if they go and they are like, this is not for me, then we go back and look at other options and just kind of go from there.
I feel like if I was an individual and I had those services, I would kind of game the system, and I'd be wanting to do it every week. You want to see what's out there. So it'd be like every week, I'd be like, hey, Mrs. White, where are we going?
And we do a lot of different things, but unfortunately, when you add in extracurricular activities that these students are doing, it's not always, feasible to do every week. But we do want them to get out and be exposed to as much as they possibly can.
Mm-hmm.
So, like we do the Career Expo, but then again, Skills USA does a big thing, just exposing them to as much in one location as possible. Then we're able to go and magnify that and to just smaller down to whatever it is that they're interested in.
Yeah, and as they get feedback, like I like this part of it, but I didn't like this part. Oh, well, let's try this. This focuses a little bit more on that. How about the counseling post-secondary training?
We do a lot of, and I'll let Shannon talk, we do a lot of college tours under this, and we've seen, when we go around the state and do Transition Unlimited, we have a time where the counselors and the teachers can kind of provide some feedback about what they've done. And I know across the state, and again, you can address it, we've heard a lot of success from this because those students, they'll take them to a 2-year college, a tech school, 4-year university, and we've had a lot of success, students coming back and really being determined to do well because now they know that post-secondary is an option for them. So
Yeah, and with that, we go on the college tours and that gets them excited, but then we come back in the classroom and we talk about college prep. What does it take to get in? How do we complete admission packets?
financial aid.
How do we disclose our disability, get an accommodation? So we break it down so that it's not this big picture, but we break it down smaller so that they are prepared to actually go and not have it as a thought, but this is something that I can actually do and I'm going to do it with the help.
I feel like all of this should be provided to every student in schools. Every student, whether you have a disability or not. But I guess that kind of rests on the individual's shoulders at that point. If the ones that don't have a disability can't receive these services.
Well, I know through their schools they have college days where they go to campuses, but yeah, it's what we provide is beneficial to everyone.
But it's a lot. I mean, it's really cool that you guys do these things. And then the workplace readiness program, if you could speak a little bit.
Workplace readiness training, that includes like your social skills program. We have a really good social skills program that we've implemented, and a lot of our community rehab programs provide it. It's called Smart Work Ethics, and we've seen a lot of good success with that. We've had some CRPs who have developed their own social skills program, but for the most part, I think they're using Smart Work Ethics. Yeah. And they do financial literacy classes. We talk about accessing transportation.
That's a big one.
Yeah.
Transportation's a huge topic in the state right now.
Yeah.
What do you guys see going on there, or where do you see it going?
I'm hoping it improves and gets better because right now, unless you're living in a metro area like Birmingham, it's very rare to have public transportation. Private transportation if it's available, but public transportation is definitely a limitation when it comes to employment with a lot of our students.
Yeah, I was going to say you can do a lot of stuff online technology, but there are a lot of jobs that you have to do in person on site, and that transportation really limit there. And then the self-advocacy program.
Well, that's just what it says. It's teaching our students how to disclose their disability or ask for accommodations. What are some things you've done?
We do self-determination. We also do appropriate relationships, advocating for yourself in a workplace and just talking about etiquette, proper etiquette when working with people, with individuals who have disabilities. And then also those individuals working with the public, because that can be a twofold as well, just getting them comfortable enough to go out and speak up for themselves. And it's just, we do a lot of role playing with self-advocacy.
Okay, that's a really cool thing to mention there. So you kind of set up scenarios and then say, go ahead from there. We had a teacher about a month and a half ago ask for additional information about transitional services. If a teacher has a question, how would they go about getting that information, or what would you recommend to them?
Well, if they don't know who their VR counselor is for their school, they could always contact me at the state office, or they could contact their local VR office, because we have regional VR offices. But my email address is karen.jenkins@rehab.alabama.gov, and I could always get them in contact with the appropriate person.
So the first one would be to go to your local school counselor, have a good talk with them.
Well, and they should be able to put you in contact with the appropriate VR counselor.
Yeah.
And if they didn't get anywhere there, then they could go contact their local VR office, and then or me, of course.
Yeah, I wonder why she asked that question. I don't know if she's having some difficulty there or what. I don't even know if it's a girl, but it was a question that we had. I'd like to talk a little bit. Is there a difference? Person is in the school system under IDEA receiving services through the education system, and then when they transition out of the school system and they're still eligible for services, they go to the ID waiver under ADMH.
So I don't want to spend a lot of time talking about that because I'm not with ADMH, so I don't want to give out any misinformation. What we just encourage our students to do, and Shannon can address this too, is because, through the waiver there are different eligibility requirements than they are for IDEA. So we encourage our students to kind of start talking to the representatives from ADMH earlier to get on that waiting list, because there is a waiting list, and determine what those eligibility criteria are.
Yeah, I feel like that would be a big conversation at that time, because as an individual or a family, you want to know that would be one of my questions at that point. Yeah, we're going for work, but we also need to make sure
I would say typically it's brought up during their IEP meetings.
Okay.
By their program specialist or whoever the special ed coordinator is, just to go ahead and get the family thinking, okay, you have 4 years at this point, and we need to go ahead and so they talk about that during IEP meetings with the family.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that's being brought up, just not necessarily what you guys focus on.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's talk about examples of transitions. So let's kind of spitball 4 or 5 different examples of 9th through 24, where someone could start and then end there.
The main thing that comes to my mind is Project Search.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if you are familiar with Project Search. It's a program, so after they've completed their 12th grade year and they're eligible to stay until 21 in school, Project Search is an option, and they go to a site, which in Alabama all of ours are hospitals.
Although we have 15 Project Search sites currently, and as Shannon said, they are all in a hospital setting, but we have been making some contact with manufacturers to try to get in our foot in the door and maybe have a Project Search site. But Shannon's really involved with the one in Shelby County.
They go through 3 internships throughout the school year, so it's just a regular school year, August to May, and they're working on work skills, and they're developing those skills in each site, so they go to a different site each time. And sometimes the hospital will hire them at the end of it, but the goal of that program is when they finish in May is for them to have a job so that they are employed. That is the goal. I have one that I worked with 2 years ago, and I got him when he was in 10th grade, and just seeing him able to get his license through Lakeshore, actually, here through the adaptive driving training program that we have. And from there, he went through Project Search. He did an amazing job. He was in patient escort. That was one. He was in Morrison's, and then he was also in what we call the cath lab, PACU area. And from there, he was just assisting the nurses and helping, greeting the patients, things like that. So they actually created him a position as a surgical tech.
That's awesome.
And so now he cleans all the utensils, sterilizes them, and then he actually scrubs in and helps with different surgeries, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
So he, if the doctor says a scalpel or something, then he's actually able to hand the different tools.
And that's the goal of Project Search, is to help our students transition into jobs that they wouldn't traditionally be kind of geared to transitioning into. So that's a great example of,
Yeah, I have a friend that lives in Tuscaloosa, and he works at a hospital there, and I wonder if he went through this program. We did a broadcast with him from APSI conference, so I'll have to reach out to him and ask if he went through this program for that job. One of the things that he was saying is, yes, he's got the job now, but he was looking for some additional benefits. He's not full-time, so he wanted to get the full-time. So he's working with the hospital to see if that's possible. But he loves his job. He's a greeter, making sure the patients are taken care of. I don't know if I'd want to get in the operating room. That's too much red.
He loves it. It's like it's right up his alley.
Yeah.
And even going back now, just seeing him when I'm there with the new interns, it's just like the joy and the smile never, ever leaves, it seems like.
Yeah, you want that to happen for each individual.
That makes you keep going on and doing what you do right there. Yeah.
Now, one thing that we haven't talked about much is the Youth Leadership Forum. If you guys could introduce that.
So the Youth Leadership Forum is held on the campus of Troy University. It's always the first week in June, and it's for 11th and 12th graders in the state. There is an application process. We usually select around 40 or 45 individuals to attend. At the end of the day, we usually have about 35 who actually attend camp. But Youth Leadership is held Sunday through Thursday. We actually have alumni staff who come back and help us run camp, and we have students from Auburn University and Troy who come. So actually the staff report on Friday. The students from Auburn and Troy, and the alumni staff, they report on Sunday. We kind of have staff training, and then the delegates come in on Sunday afternoon. And there's myself and then 2 other professional staff, a professor from Troy and from Auburn. We kind of run the staff training, and then when the delegates get there, we kind of step back and just make sure everything runs smoothly. But camp is really ran by those alumni staff and volunteer staff, those students. And so during the week, we talk about self-advocacy, we talk about independent living, we talk about career exploration, we do a leadership plan. And we come to Montgomery one day where we have a mentors luncheon. We go to the Capitol, learn about the legislative process and how important our vote is. And then at the mentors luncheon, our delegates are paired with a mentor who has a disability similar to their own, and they're able to spend some time with that mentor, kind of talking to them and asking questions and just really learning from that mentor. And then we wrap it up on Thursday with a graduation, but it's a great week. We stay there on campus. Have a lot of delegates who come who've never been away from home, and it's their first time there.
Well, that's a really good point.
Yeah. And so I don't know how it happens or when it happens, but sometime during the week, those delegates that arrive on Sunday, they change, and they are not the same person who leaves on Thursday. And so it's a great program. I've been so blessed to be a part of it for so many years, and so we're getting ready to plan for YLF 2020 now, and should have those applications out. Usually come out in January. So
that's awesome. And we have a little video behind the scenes that we'll put in here so you can see kind of firsthand what YLF looks like. And we'll cut that to the video. What would be, do you stay on campus at YLF? So you stay in the dorms? We
do. We stay on the dorms. In the dorms.
Yeah, in the dorms. That reminds me of just like a football camp or something I went to. But that's a huge thing there, getting out from, I don't want to say from under your family, but kind of getting out on your own.
Yeah, well, it's a big thing for the parents, and it's a big thing for the students, because a lot of times, when the student has never been away from home, the parents, it's really harder on the parents.
Yeah.
I never will forget one year, because I always give the parents my cell phone number, and I'm like, call me, text me, whatever. And so this mom texted me, and I went and found her son, and she was like, how are you doing? And she was, missing him and wanting to talk to him, and he was, you need to back off. I'm having a great time. And he hadn't been answering his cell phone because he was having a good time and he was doing fine. So it's a great experience. We've had students who've come to YLF and had never really thought about going to college and living on, the independent part of it scared them.
Yeah.
And but once they've stayed a week at YLF in a dorm by themselves, they were ready to go. So it's a great experience for everybody.
Now, do they bunk together, 2 in a room?
We have in the past. This last year we made some changes, so everybody stays by themselves in a dorm by themselves from now on.
Why some of the changes like that?
We just had to make some changes, just for safety concerns and just the need to make some changes. Yeah.
I think one really cool aspect of that is the mentorship. Being there, well, as you said, the not the admins, returning graduates,
alumni.
the alumni. Yeah, they're the ones that are kind of running the show
Right, so, well,
on a day-to-day.
yeah, at the beginning of the camp, whenever, during staff training, we develop groups. There's usually 6 or 7 groups, and they have a group counselor, a co-counselor, an activities leader, a peer mentor, and of course the peer mentor will be those alumni staff who come back. And then we divide the delegates up into those groups. So while they're staying by themselves in a dorm, not in the dorm, but in a room by themselves, we're all in the same dorm, and that group, you know, they kind of make sure the delegates getting up and they stay in their group the whole time, so they're never by themselves. There's always that group aspect of where they're doing the activities together, and the group is making sure, hey, Karen's not down here, somebody go find her. You know, she's kind of running late, so.
Yeah, because that would be a big thing for
Yeah.
a mom or a dad, and
Yeah.
making sure that they're well taken care of.
And we have nursing staff. We have 4 CNAs and an RN who's with us the whole time to help with those, you know, dispensing the medication and activities of daily living. The CNAs are there to help with the bathing, toileting, feeding, and things like that.
Yeah.
So,
I think the time with the mentor, someone that's been there before or is where you want to
Yeah.
get, is awesome. And you could spend 4 days with that individual, just
Yeah.
asking questions like, hey, how'd you do this? You know,
Yeah.
what got you there? How do you like it?
yeah, it's great.
Yeah, I would give uber amounts of money to be able to do that with someone where I wanted to be in 5 or 10 years.
Yeah.
This is kind of off topic, but the living environments, I had a question about, and I don't know if there are any hard stats, but do you notice that individuals that go through the transition services, as they get out of high school and start to get a job, do they typically still live at home or on their own or in kind of a community setting?
Well, you know, when we take an application, the counselor checks where they're living at, and 98% of our transition-aged consumers at the time of application, they're living in a private residence. That could be with their family or on their own. I think for the most part, once they transition out of high school, I guess obviously for those who are going to college, they're going to be living by themselves. But I think probably for the most part,
They stay at home.
a lot of our consumers, the majority of our consumers, I think, are most significantly disabled, so they're going to be at home living with their parents.
Yeah, I know that's a kind of a thing that the state is pushing is community living instead of the group home living.
Right.
Yes.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So I didn't know if that was also, you're seeing more of individuals go to their own apartment or, you know, those things. I
It
didn't.
just depends on the student too. Like she said those that are most significantly, they just typically stay with a parent or sibling, or aunt or uncle, some type of family member. But then those that are able to move out, oh, they do.
They want to get out of it.
They do move out.
I have some families that will sometimes ask, well, what type of job can my son or daughter get if they need more services, lower functioning, as you said? What type of jobs do you see there?
Well, we have a really great supported employment program. I think probably you're going to be talking to them pretty soon, the next couple of interviews. So you'll learn a lot about a supported employment program. But it's really, you know, we have, and through that program we offer job coaching to help those students who need a little more help learning their job. They can have a job coach to be with them until they're ready to. That job coach can fade. The job coach fades once that student has learned all of their job tasks.
Yeah, there isn't just one job
Right.
like that we just say, oh, we're just going to send people. It's tailored and very
Right.
customized to the
Right.
individual based on what their abilities are and what their interests are.
Right. They'll do an assessment to kind of see where their strengths and weaknesses lie, and really it's their interest.
Yeah.
And they, like she said, tailor a job to meet that.
Now, when did WIOA come out? Am I saying that right? WIOA?
WIOA,
When did that?
2014.
2014. Now, do the states kind of get together? Is there a WIOA conference, or what are you seeing in other states?
Well, when it was signed into law in 2014, in the summer of 2014, we were mandated to provide pre-employment transition services that day. And so we kind of just...
Did you get a prep for it a little?
No, you just kind of... They didn't release the regs until like 2 years later to tell us how to do it. So we kind of just had to go do what we thought. We read the law and did what we thought the law was telling us to do. And fortunately, a lot of states struggled with it. We don't have a WIO conference. We have a CSAVR that is a Council for State Administrators in the Vocational Rehab Program.
Okay.
And so when you go to CSAVR, you'll hear a lot of states. It took a while to kind of decide to change the ship, so to speak. And for some states to kind of figure out how they were going to do it and what they were going to do. Fortunately, for our counselors for us, because of counselors like Shannon and other great counselors throughout the state, we met our 15% mandate. And a lot of states struggled to meet their 15% mandate, but we had a lot of great folks out in the field, doing what they were asked to do and going out there and providing those services and collaborating. So I think we're still, when you go to conferences, you're still, while it's been out since 2014, there's really no, there's best practices, but there's not really any evidence-based practices yet because it's still so new, and it took a while for us to get the regs out, and it took a while for states to kind of get their footing in terms of pre-employment transition services. But again, it's all the credit to our counselors in our state. We've done a great job and have been able to do what was asked.
The schools were definitely, and parents and consumers, they were excited about it. I will say that, because believe it or not, they do their own research as well.
Yeah,
And
I mean, it has been a total change in how we did things in terms of transition. We really had to change the way we were doing everything, just about. But again, the staff, the counselors did a great job and have just pulled it out. It's all the credit is to them.
Yeah, it can be a little nerve-wracking, but if you have the client at the end that's extremely excited about it, you have the end goal there. It's like, let's try a few things, see if these are working, and implement from there.
Yeah.
So you're still going through that. Not going through that, but as you say, still locking it down there. Are there any upcoming events or highlights that you'd like to talk about?
Well, we're getting ready to do our Transition Unlimited. We'll start those meetings in October and November to develop that plan that we were talking about for those pre-employment transition services. And really, our counselors are really just getting out there and super busy providing these services. We'll do job exploration again in the summer, but I can't think of. We'll have YLF during the summer,
but nothing statewide. Everything is more on the local level.
Yeah.
And you said you're going to open up YLF here shortly, right?
We'll probably send out applications in January.
In January.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So watch for your inboxes.
Yeah, definitely. So, yeah, and that's a good point, Shannon. We've talked about smart work ethics and JET, and Shannon's talked about what she's doing, but there's a lot of counselors in other areas who are doing a lot of great things too, and we hear about them sometimes, and sometimes we don't. But it's really, I think what a parent or a student should know is they need to get in touch with their VR counselor, because there could be some things that are happening that maybe we haven't talked about, or we don't. We know they're providing pre-ETs, but when it comes down to those individual services that are actually being provided, there could be some things that are available in one area because of a CRP that aren't available in another area because that CRP is not there. So it's really
It's
individualized,
based on the
location, area based,
So if a student or an individual were to ask me, or a teacher were to ask me, or a parent were to ask me about transitional service, I would say go to your VR counselor at your school.
Yeah.
That's going to be my answer from here on out.
Yes, that's a great answer.
Yeah, that is a good answer.
Perfect.
Because that's what we're there for.
Is there anything that we haven't talked about that you would like to say? Anything to the individuals, anything to parents or teachers that might watch the video?
I would just say, we're there to support. We're there to provide these services to help the students transition from school into whatever they want to do, whether it be post-secondary training or employment. We have a lot available. A lot of services are available, and the key is to make contact with their VR counselor, because they're that's where the boots hit the ground and the services get provided. So
just staying connected and just letting them know we're here and ready to work whenever they are.
Awesome. Well, I'd like to thank you both for being here with us today. And we will be going, I don't even need to say that, but we'll be going live Thursday.